Welcome to Next Gen Mentoring Forum. The Next Gen Mentoring Forum series is to empower, educate, and illuminate individuals who are in the financial planning industry or coming into the financial planning industry. At each webinar, an expert will discuss the topic in the financial planning area for the purpose of inspiring critical thoughts and discussion. Today's session, I will interview Dr. Vlad Vaman on why is talent management important for financial planning practices. My name is Dr. Chia-Li. I am an assistant professor and director of financial planning program at California Lutheran University. I maintain an active financial planning practice specializing in succession program management. I've authored 3 award-winning books. Most recent peer-reviewed research book was published by Pelgrim Macmillan entitled Enhancing Retirement Success Rates in the United States. Next Gen Mentoring Forum is sponsored by California Lutheran University School of Management Financial Planning Program. We offer MBA financial planning that helps financial advisors pursue a leadership position or grow their financial planning practice by deploying advanced financial planning techniques, effective communication with clients and counseling, as well as streamlined practice management leveraging fintech. Today, I am honored to interview Dr. Vlad Vaman. Dr. Vaman is a professor of international business at California Lutheran University. He holds a PhD degree in international management from University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. His professional experience include working on various consulting assignments for a number of major organizations throughout the world, including US, Canada, Switzerland, Austria, Russia, as well as other European countries. Dr. Vaiman is a longtime member of Canadian Association of Management Consultants and highly sought after speaker on topics of talent management and cross-cultural communication and negotiations. Dr. Vaiman has published 5 very successful books that you can see on the screen and manage in the area of managing talents in an organization. And his academic work has appeared on several top academic journals. So welcome, Dr. Vaiman. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate it. When I put together this particular topic, I got a lot of questions from specifically recruiters. They want to be part of today's discussion and panels. And so I thought before we actually get into a discussion, can we get a definition of what is talent management? What is human resources and what is recruiting? Because I believe that all 3 terms have different purpose and different meanings.
Yeah, of course. And I'll explain, but I need to go back and explain from the very beginning. Before we talk about talent management, we need to really understand the working definitions of both talent and talent management. And this is what I always do before we begin talking about talent management. We need to understand and make sure that we're all on the same platform of understanding. And so there are quite a few definitions of talent, but my colleagues and I talk, when we talk about talent, we mean key people in critical job roles and employees who possess and or are pursuing specialized and in-demand knowledge and skills. And it's important to remember that talent itself is highly contextual, which means that a talent in one setting, either organizational setting, departmental setting, job setting, may not be deemed as such in a different setting, right? Imagine, as I always say, imagine, if I do lectures and I do it pretty well, I think, and I'm in my context, and perhaps somebody can consider me as talent. But if you put me in front of a piano, probably it's not going to be, a very happy happening for anyone, really. So context is important. So talent management, therefore, is a set of meaningful techniques aimed at 4 things, really. Attracting and identifying, attracting from outside or identifying from inside the organization. So it's number 1. Motivating, developing, and retaining organization's most valuable employees. And also ensuring their deployment in those roles that add the greatest value to the company. So again, talent management activities usually revolve around the following 4 topics: identifying and attracting talent, and that's where recruiting comes into, actually. Recruiting is part of identifying and attracting. It's just a part of it. So when people use recruiting as an equivalent to talent management or equivalent to HR management, this is wrong. Then developing talented employees, managing talent flows, so basically putting people in the right context, and ensuring retention of talented employees. And you also asked a question about the differences, right, between HRM and talent management. There are more than 3 differences, but I'm going to tell you about 3 most important ones. First of all, talent management moves the human capital agenda beyond the HR function. So outside of HR function into the boardroom. And leadership, organizational leadership, is both the beneficiary of talent management, because talent management, one of the reasons to manage talent is to ensure continuous pipeline of leaders within an organization. But also leadership is supposed to support and initiate talent management, where HR is playing an assisting role, right? So that's number 1 difference. Number 2 is talent management generally has a narrower focus than HR, because HR, right, is applied to all employees in an organization. Pension and benefits and compliance and everything like that all applies to everyone. While talent management, as I understand it, and as I work on it, is targeted at employees with high level of human capital. And the third distinction is that in general, there is a greater differentiation of talent management practices to support key employees' needs, as opposed to just HR practices. So it's narrower, it's more targeted, and it goes beyond the HR function. If that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And I think that gives us a good picture of, in terms of what I hear was the talent management has 4 major parts. First one is attracting, identifying talents. The second one is recruiting, development, and retention. So that's the encompass of the talent management. But the difference between the talent management and human resources is really, really, I guess what you were explaining is really trying to focus on a key skill set, especially using that human capital to increase the company value. Do I summarize that correctly in terms of the definition?
Except for one part. Recruiting is part of identifying and attracting. Recruiting is not a separate function. It's just part of identifying and attracting. Then developing, then managing talent flows, which means basically putting people in the right context and then retaining those people.
Right. So I know that you recently run an executive talent management forum. Can you tell us a little bit about this, a particular forum, and why would someone who is in financial planning industry, as an example, needs to be part of this discussion like this?
Yes, and how interesting that we have one of our organizing committee members right here. I can see Mr. Schauer. Hello, Nick. Nice to see you.
See you too.
Thank you. So yes, Chia-Li, let me just talk about this a little bit. Once a year, and especially, let me just give you a little overview, because, if people never attended it, they need to understand what it's all about. Once a year, we hold an executive talent management series of events where we invite C-suite executives and some of the foremost experts in talent management from different organizations in the area and outside, such as the Cheesecake Factory, Semtech, Raytheon, Mercer, Mankind, the Trade Desk, Herbalife, Medtronic, Amgen, and what have you, to be part of the collective brain power of industry leaders and world-class experts residing at the School of Management. So the idea really behind the series is to build a bridge between industry and academia through leveraging participants' extensive knowledge and experience of people like Nick, for example. So over these 5 years, we've talked about different topics. Like we started, I think, from the topic of millennials in the workforce. Then we talked about the role of culture in talent management, the role of analytics in talent management, whether talent management is really for everyone in the company or only for a select few, and other topics. The topic for this year's forum was talent management, automation, and employment. And we talked about the workforce in the age of digitalization, artificial intelligence, and robotization. Among other things, actually, we discussed whether traditional talent management techniques aimed at those four things, right, may no longer be appropriate in a fast-changing world. As technology evolves, certain types of jobs are being substituted by artificial intelligence and the like. Some jobs are being augmented. Some jobs are being created. And company leaders may have to modify their existing talent management strategies to adapt to new changes. And they may need to do it in a much more agile manner than they used to. You want me to talk more about this forum? Because I just wanted to highlight very interesting survey results.
I actually, part of the reason I wanted to mention this was a lot of time financial planning professionals need to work with clients, but by understanding what's going on in an industry, especially in this particular platform, actually can help understanding where clients are coming from in terms of all these different technology upgrades. One of the survey, I pulled down two things from your conference. This is one of the first questions that I have in terms of how will, in the survey form itself, you're asking whether or not the technology part of it or AI part of it will potentially change the way we work. We know that in financial planning services or financial services industry in general, we use a lot of technology, so much that we call it fintech. And how would employers or employees, from employers and employees' perspective, how should we keep up with technology?
Well, how to keep up with technology is a difficult question. And you see, the problem is not with employees, I think. We can talk about retention later on and, attraction. But in general, what's happening, I've noticed, throughout these years, within the past 10 years, 10 years, and now I see that maybe it's due to the pandemic, maybe something else, but more and more companies are using some sort of automation, either artificial intelligence or digitalization or I should say probably, or process automation or robotization, or even virtual reality sometimes, right? So over 60% of our respondents, because of that, they started to identify and define and develop and retain their talent differently in the past 5 to 10 years due to these changes in technology, right? So, and companies need to also keep up with this because, look, what's happening is that even though organizations understand that they need to invest in new technology, they need to get people with that set of skills, still quite a few companies are not up to speed. And according to our survey, those organizations that do not take advantage of automation, when asked why, they mention lack of commitment from top leadership. This is the #1 reason why they don't take advantage. Then cost of implementation, or sometimes I would even say perceived cost of implementation, because people a priori think that it's really expensive, which may or may not be the case. Unwillingness to upskill workforce is about 15% of respondents say that. And another 15% say we just don't have enough resources, money or people to undertake those changes. So when you say what employees need to have, I would rather turn this question around and say, what do both of them have to have in order to take advantage of automation in general?
I know that in most likely, okay, so sorry about that, Nick, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I hope you don't mind if I interrupting you. You guys have a good dialogue going there. But just so I can maybe add anything if I can to the conversation. Is it Dr. Chien? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Dr. Jan, yes.
Dr. Chien. Is when you talk about financial planning, what's the scope of financial planning people? So, because when I first hear that, I think of either two things. One, I think of like the profession of personal financial planners that help people plan out their individual, financial plans for their lives. That's one I think of. Another one I think of is in corporations, you have people that are involved in planning the financial outcomes or for the future for a corporation. It could be a small team, it could be a really big team in a much bigger business. Are we talking about one or the other, or something different, or what's the scope?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in financial planning industry, depending upon who is your clientele, majority of the time, the first part, when you mentioned about personal finance, that's majority of the financial planning, financial services folks, that's their focus. They're focusing on working with individual families, if you will. The second part of your question is in terms of with the business, and they are a small part of the industry. People like me, we also work with business owners where they have a business. We have to plan for their business before we can plan for the personal side. But for the majority part of the people in the industry, they tend to be focusing on the personal finance side.
So you're actually, it sounds like your study or your work is around both buckets.
Right, for me personally, yeah, but majority of our students or our industry friends, they are mostly on the personal side.
Thank you.
So thank you, Nick, and thank you, Vlad, for answering my questions. My next question was actually a little bit different than this the previous one, and this was we know that depending upon what employees and employers need to be able to remain competitive in the industry, and especially in the financial planning industry, where we have the robo-advisors, we have lots and lots of automations that you can simply go on to Fidelity's website, TD Ameritrade, or Charles Schwab. You can do a lot on your own personal planning. So how do we, as an employees or employers, to keep up the skills and maintain that, remain that competitiveness?
That's a good question. Well, imagine that you have a good bunch of people you want to retain in your firm in order to remain competitive, but who may not be fully, as I say, up to speed with the current state of technology, newest trends, etc. What do you do then, right? That's your question, basically. Well, I think there are three potential solutions. First of all, you can redeploy them. Moving certain people elsewhere in the company. Even in a small company, many people wear different hats, right? So you can redeploy them in different parts of business. Don't forget, again, talent is a highly contextual notion. And a talent in one department, for example, sales, those who do sales, right, looking for clients, may not be necessarily designated as talent in a different line of work. Second, you can upskill them. So redeploy the first one, upskilling the second one, taking the essence of what they do and basically improving it, helping them to become more advanced, more gifted in what they do. The third way is to reskill them, training them in something new, right? In new technology, in new way of doing business, a new way, I don't know, of approaching clients, whatever. This last solution, actually, the reskilling, has gotten most of the press coverage lately. I read a lot because I have to. You know, a lot of press coverage because it touches on many important things like social responsibility, ethics, employer obligations, employee rights, and other things. And many companies struggle with reskilling their employees. And what's critical here, I think, what's important is to think about the nexus between what a person is doing today and what the same person could be good at in the future, right? So basically, you need to stop as a manager and think about each individual, not a person as a person, but person as a set of skills first. And see how you can use the same set of skills, maybe by upgrading them, reskilling those skills, upskilling, whatever you want to call them, to prepare this person, this talent, for the future. You can also be strategic, right? When you talk about competition and competitiveness, right away to my mind comes strategy. Of course, you need to be strategic to remain competitive through both effective and efficient use of human capital available at your firm. So there are actually a few strategies that you can use in order to be competitive, to remain competitive through the use of human capital. First of all, I think it's very important, and I use it all the time myself with my work with students or with clients. Do not create false expectations. One of the most pivotal areas of retention efforts, actually, speaking of retention, is proper management of employee expectations. Mismatched expectations often result in employees' departure, or alternatively, well-managed expectations serve as a powerful retention tool. Setting expectations in an explicit manner, I think, starting to manage expectations during recruiting, not when a person has already arrived and becomes a part of the organization, but during recruiting even. Fostering an environment of mutual trust, recognizing that people and individual expectations should change over time and do change over time, probably are among the most successfully used techniques in this area. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important to establish clear career paths. Even in small firms, when the organizational structure is so flat that there's no way to grow, still establish clear career paths. Smart companies clearly state their commitment to promotions from within and internal mobility of professionals. So they let their employees to be in charge of their career destiny. And it's very important, especially when we talk about professionals. I'm not necessarily talking about blue collar employees, right? I'm talking about professionals, specifically in professional services firms. This is something that I did my research 16, 17 years ago, and I'm continuing now with professional services firms. Corporate culture at such firms implies that anybody within the company can apply for any position at either higher or lateral level. They encourage promotion from within and fill up good companies, as I say, up to 80% of all available vacancies from within. Actually, I find that for professional services firms, 80-20 ratio works well. 80% promoted from within, 20% fresh blood. Another good plan.
Can I just interrupt for a moment, because I think that you mentioned some critical strategic kind of direction for many people that who are listening in. The setting the expectation with the employees, yeah, you mentioned about that is done during recruitment, not when someone arrived. And I think that is the same as how we help our clients as well. Sometimes clients leave you because of that missed expectation as well. Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of transferable strategic kind of solution for both handling clients as well as handling employees, because happy employees is going to treat your clients better, right? And that they can retain your clients as well. The second thing that you mentioned about career path, I want to just briefly go to, there are two slides that I have here just to help people understand that within the financial planning area, that we typically have many different things in a company. We call them in general advisory firm. Advisory firm could be doing investment, could be doing planning, could be doing a lot of things. But you mentioned about career path, and I think this is where a lot of companies don't have that properly set up in their firm. So the chart that you're seeing here, this is put out by the Certified Financial Planning CFP board, recommending that financial planning practices actually have this kind of structure in place. The career path that you mentioned, I think is critical for people to know that once I achieved a certain level of skill set, am I going to be into the management side, or am I going to be on the equity partner side? I think that's a very important part. One question that I do have in regarding about career path is that within the industry, obviously people can go for their Certified Financial Planner certificate from the CFP board. And many of our students do that, and many of my colleagues in the industry that do that as well. But I think that once someone achieves a certificate, for when you mention about retraining or the kind of a new skill, retraining that new skill, I think that from a automation perspective, there are tons and tons of automation can do the advisor's job. What I think that advisors needs to do is to have that new skill set, as you mentioned, such as financial counseling skill, right? Financial coaching skill. A lot of these are also a separate certificate. So my questions to you here is that for someone who have a team that has many advisors working for them or establishing on their own firm, what would be your recommendation in terms of timing for new training reskill or timing for improvement and things like that? What would be your recommendation?
That's a good question. You know, what's interesting, I'm both Russian and Canadian, so I'm into hockey, big time.
Okay.
You know, like most Americans are into baseball and American football. I'm into hockey more than anything else. So the great one, Wayne Gretzky, our neighbor here in Westlake Village, who's selling his house for 22.9, by the way, is if anybody's interested, in Lake Shorewood. When he was asked why is he so great, why has he scored, you know, more goals than anyone can even imagine, more goals than anyone can even imagine, who could see the field, the rink very well, who was so successful. He said, I always go not where the puck was, but where it's going to be.
Ah, that's a key point, where it's going to be.
That's the key point also in talent management when you think about upskilling your workforce. Again, look at your employees, current employees, and think how you can use their skills, current skills, plus something else, what you provide them with, you know, new skills, how you can use them in the future. And when I say future, I'm not talking about 50 years from now, right? I'm talking about even 1 year, 2 years from now, because technology grows by leaps and bounds. You have to be able to kind of look into it, look at the scan the environment, look for trends, and try to be there before everybody else.
And so that's great in terms of kind of looking forward in the future, but we as an industry also face a big problem, and that's a talent shortage. Yeah. Meaning that the time that you train someone that who can do the job, by the time that they leave the company, the turnover is high. And so facing with talent shortage, what would you advise companies? I know that there are several people in the call today that they have their own firm. They also face that issue. They're not able to attract the right people to come into the business. So what would you recommend in that sense?
How much time do we have?
I guess as much as you want.
It's a whole new chapter, I would say. You know, well, first of all, we need to understand two things. In order to fight shortage, I should say, you need to consider that two things: attracting people, attracting new talent, and retaining existing talent. We can start with let's start with retention, because this is probably the bigger part of it. So there are a few things that companies can do to retain professionals. When I talk about professional service, financial planning firms, we're talking about professionals, right? In my own research, as I said, of professional services firms, which financial planning companies belong to, I was able to come up with 5 key reasons why these professionals stay with their companies. So if they're managers or partners or whatever, senior advisors, you call them, right, can take care of these reasons, your best professionals, your top talent will stay with you. So here are these top 5 reasons in order of importance, by the way. Number 1, exciting work and challenge. This comes, by the way, from multiple surveys throughout the years. Exciting work and challenge has always been trending as number 1 reason why people stay in their companies. Number 2, career growth opportunities. We already mentioned that. That's what professionals want. Number 3, may or may not be surprised to some of you, work autonomy. They don't want any micromanagement. They want to work, to be responsible for a chunk of work or for a project on their own without somebody breathing down their neck. Number 4, fair pay and benefits. They want to be compensated adequately. Number 5, good, understanding boss. Remember that saying that people don't leave their companies, they leave their managers? That's exactly what it is. By the way, number 6, a very close number 6, was recognition for a job well done. People want to be appreciated for what they do. And there are quite a few techniques, for example, an exciting working challenge, what you can do. Let me just briefly go through those if you want.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you don't mind to give us the example.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of
points.
one at least, because otherwise it's going to take a few hours.
Right, just one.
Exciting working challenge, number one reason. Let me tell you how it might work in professional services firms. Number one, what you can do is to pay close attention to project staffing. The majority of professional service firms do not want their employees to stay with the same kind of assignment or same client for the long time. It may or may not be different for financial planners, but if you're a larger company, make sure that your professionals do not do the same thing all over again. Routine kills professionals.
How often would you recommend people to rotate around then?
Use either project rotation or team rotation. Rotate
okay, so
teams,
team or project rotation, okay.
To keep them interested and excited.
But sometimes
number two, you can dedicate some.
Might be a 6-month rotation, might be every year, might be every couple of years. It depends on the environment, I would think.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, good point.
Number two, delegate some decision-making power to them. Again, it goes both to autonomy and exciting working challenge. Not to all of them, though. Let the most trustworthy and experienced professionals manage a big task, as I said before, or even maybe an entire project, entire client by themselves. And it has proven to be successful. Another technique could be make assignments themselves interesting and stimulating. This should be achieved with the proper client mix, for example. Give them some older pensioners and give them some young people to work with, right, as clients, for example. Emphasize the recruiting process, because everything starts with recruiting. Most firms constantly trying to find people who are excited to work directly with clients, then give them the opportunity to work with clients. So look for those skills in recruits before hiring them. Help them develop professionally, of course. If they want to take CFP or MBA in financial planning, help them.
There you go. Or go to conferences to keep the up-to-date industry information, things like that.
In your profession, and mostly in all professional services firms, you have to be upskilling yourself all the time.
All the time, yes.
Because things change on the fly. Legislation changes, everything in your industry changes immediately, right? Taxation changes, things change. So again, coming back to analytics, employ analytical tools to manage human capital, right? There are quite a few organizations that can help you with analytical tools to gauge engagement, for example, satisfaction and other things. And also, what is also important, especially now, ladies and gentlemen, with the pandemic and other things, you need to help your people to find the proper balance between personal and professional lives. May consider flexible work arrangements, and many companies do that now because there's no other choice, actually. Help them with personal issues. When things go back to normal, think about subsidizing childcare, as an example, right? Study leaves, like sabbaticals, paid parental leaves, telecommuting, career breaks, what have you. By the way, speaking of retention, I'm sorry, I'm in my lecture mode right now. It's very difficult to stop me. To sum up, really, this part, the retention part, the goal, remember, ladies and gentlemen, remember, the goal is not to have 100% retention. 100% retention is not healthy. You need to have some fresh blood once in a while, because you need new people with different experiences, different opinions, etc. But in order to achieve a proper or acceptable level of retention, or the other way, turnover, you always need to look for signs of trouble. And as a manager, it's not that difficult to do. Look for low morale. You can see it right away. Lack of trust, when there is no trust between employees and employers. People don't come to work, increased absenteeism. Lack of concentration, when people make mistakes, right? All the time. Lack of motivation, lack of confidence, I don't know, decreased productivity, right? So basically your goal in retaining people is to create certain value propositions that are best in the industry. Attract and retain top talent. You need to have a strong employer brand. which embraces atmosphere of respect and professional appreciation through retention. So that's retention.
So my question, trying to put it into your framework from a financial planning perspective. I know that most people who started out in the industry, whether or not they work on their own or work for someone else, they all started somewhere, what I call the back office mode, meaning you crunch the number, you prepare the report, and then eventually you go on and go and meet with clients, and ultimately you go out and hunt for clients, if you will. And I think that there are various different stages of that, and those are, from a management perspective, you have to make sure that the work is challenging enough. So every step away, that the employees can see the progression of what they made throughout that career path. But I think that one thing you mentioned is critical here is the retention. 100% is not necessarily a good thing. And you mentioned that 20% should be coming from the outside. And the only example I can think of is that oftentimes financial planning industry tend to hire the lower end, meaning that the entry level jobs. Very rarely that they actually hire lead advisors or the guys who's actually hunting the clients. So I think that, do you have any preference or recommendation for companies that, because what it comes down to is the economics, right? If I were to hire someone who is in the lead advisor position, that's going to cost me at least $500,000 just to bring in the door, versus I'm going to train somebody who probably going to be a total compensation of somewhere between $70,000 to $100,000 or so. What is your recommendation in terms of companies who are in the crossroad? They need to grow. So what will be a right type of approach in your opinion?
I think there should be a mix. Whatever makes sense to you, to your company, whatever your strategies, everything depends on the strategy. You see, the problem with, and gives a lot of work to me as a consultant, a problem with many organizations, not only professional services firms, is that they start from somewhere in the middle. They say, hey, why don't we just change a mix of our employees and see what happens? That's not the right way to do. You need to start with your strategy. What is your mission, vision, and what do you see yourself, let's say, between 3 to 5 years from now as a company? And then you go for your financial strategy, right? You break this down into finance, operations, into human resource, etc. So only then you look for a proper mix. Sometimes it's better for you only to develop your people. So take them when they're young to entry-level position and grow all of them. Sometimes it makes sense for you to grow by getting those expensive leaders or senior advisors, because you want to maybe enter a new market who, they can help you with that because they have connections. Or what most companies do, they use a mix. But again, go back to your strategy and see what makes sense to you. Don't base your decisions on just on a spur of the moment. And that's what happens. And when you make mistakes, especially in a state like California, it's very difficult to get rid of people.
That's true. Yeah.
To say that. So mistakes are costly.
And so if I could possibly walk through an example where I've worked with several clients' firm in a similar situation where their goal was to make 3 times of their, what we call the asset under management. So let's say they currently make X dollar amount of the asset under management. Their goal is to make 3 times of that within the next 5 years. And so what they have done was they did exactly what you said, where once they have the goal, they knew that they need to have one lead advisor where that person can actually expand to a specific market that they're looking for. So, so matching what you're saying there. And at the same time, they have to bring in someone young or young in the industry, if you will, to train them, move them up from analyst to lead advisor. And so it does take time into the equation where small firm may or may not be able to do that. But you're right, that strategy is going to drive every single move for that particular company.
Absolutely.
I know that we have a couple more people in the session today. I don't know if anyone has any questions regarding about the talent management at this point. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going with my next question. Do we have any questions from the floor? I know that we have a couple of people who has some pretty sensible, a large firm. If you have any questions or not.
We can also, if you want, I can finish up on. So remember we said how to make sure that you have a good mix of people.
Right.
I said the retention and attraction, right? How do you address shortage? That was the question. Remember you said how to. We can continue with that or new question. I don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead and continue that because I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So in terms of addressing shortage, as I said, one way is to retain people, retain existing people, upskill them, and make sure that they stay up to speed. Another way, which is not either or, it's retention and attraction. Another way is to keep attracting talent. And it's difficult. Talent shortages persist not only in financial planning industry, but throughout. Even now, when unemployment is rather high, there are severe shortages in certain industries and certain professions. And there are 5 reasons behind those shortages that we cannot really overcome. Number 1 is aging population. As simple as that. Less children are being born, less people enter the workforce, more people retiring. Increased diversity, which requires more efforts in attracting, training, retaining. That's number 2. Significant skill deficiencies. Skills required by the labor market exceed those available in the marketplace. Employees or people's attitudes change. Employees seeking more power, they job hop, they search for better jobs, etc. And other trends, such as influx of millennials and Gen Zers now into the workforce, more emphasis on the work-life balance, increase in remote work, technological advancements, etc. So those trends are there, and for now, there is no way for us to resolve them. So as I said, the one way of dealing with shortage is to retain people, another way to attract. 3 ways or 3 areas of importance in terms of attraction. Number 1, talent and planning and deployment. Number 2, employer branding. And number 3 area is aggressive talent sourcing. I'll be very quick so that you could ask another question before we.
What was can you go back? You say the branding, sourcing. What was the first one?
Planning and deployment.
Planning and deployment. So can you talk a little bit about sourcing? What does sourcing actually means?
The last one, aggressive talent sourcing. Well, it's important to remember here a few essential things. First of all, there's a general assumption that most talented people are in general always employed. So that's the assumption, right?
That's true.
Right? You won't see probably, an epidemiologist right now who's completely unemployed, doesn't know what to do. I'm sure, right? That's true for most professionals. So the assumption is that they're employed always. So it's a challenge for any company how to reach this talent pool, so to speak. And it's clear that traditional sourcing strategies, going to universities and doing presentations and just advertising may not work anymore, given the trends that I just described, by the way. So therefore, organizations may be forced to use creative and aggressive strategies, such as, again, 3. In my first background, I'm an engineer, so I'm always trying to organize.
That's good. The more organized you are, the better we learn.
Okay. So there are 3 strategies to attract talent here in terms of sourcing. Number 1, targeting specific individual profiles, either certain skill sets or I would also emphasize that certain personality characteristics. You said that if fintech helps you to do advisor's job, right? Algorithms can solve the problem of picking the stock, for example, for a portfolio.
Right.
You, as an advisor, should have excellent communication skills in order to assess, first of all, analytical skills to assess the portfolio offered by fintech, but also to talk to a client or clients and be able to convince them. So your skills as a communicator become that much more important. So you need to look for people with specific profiles. Number 1. Number 2, what I always recommend when you have a shortage, like with IT professionals, US does not produce enough IT professionals. That's why I tell people tap into foreign markets. Now it's not easy, as we know, given immigration laws and regulations imposed by the current administration on legal immigration, but in general, it should be possible. And number three, especially for professional services firms, number three, it's not in order of importance. Attracting more diverse pool of applicants. Open your door, start reaching out to non-traditional sources, such as, I don't know, female employees, handicapped individuals, right? For example, providing support to them managing their career and making sure that the barriers are breaking, such as glass ceiling, etc. So try to reach to those constituencies that you haven't really looked at before.
One of the interesting thing you mentioned, and I've seen other firms successfully done this, was that based on what you're saying, the target profile, let's say you need a specific type of personality servicing clients or some specific skill set. One of the few companies that I know of, how they source is, they actually went to military moms. There's actually a website called Military Moms that, because they are very detailed, they have flexible working schedule, and they can learn all the planning skills and without actually physically need to be in the office. So I've seen the sourcing from military mom actually help a lot of planning firms based on your strategies here.
Yeah, here you go. I don't go to those websites because my wife would ask a lot of questions.
I've gone through the website, but I still haven't quite figured out how to crack the formula there.
No, but the idea is absolutely correct.
Right.
Something, a group of people or club or something that you haven't thought of before as potential employees or potential advisors.
So Vlad, we are just almost coming down to the end. If you could give just one advice to those companies who has a team and they wanted to grow, and what will that advice be in terms of the talent management? Get
to know your people. Regular span of management is not that great. It's not that large, I should say. You know, even if you have a company of 10,000 employees or 50,000 employees, it doesn't mean that you manage all of them on a daily basis, right? Span of management is usually 10, 15 people in average. So get to know your employees, know what they like, what they dislike, their family situation, what they're motivated by, how they look at rewards. Only then and only then will you be able to manage them in a most effective and efficient manner. That would be my only one advice.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, getting to know your employees, your team members, it does play, it does help company for the long run. So thank you so much, Vlad, today for the talent management insights. So we're so glad that you have spent time with us in the Next Gen Mentoring Forum. What a great session today. So thank you so much for your time and your insight and your expertise. And thank you for California Lutheran University School of Management Financial Planning Program for sponsoring today's Next Gen Mentoring Forum. And in California Lutheran University School of Management, we do offer MBA in financial planning, helping financial advisors pursue their leadership position to grow their financial planning practice by deploying advanced financial planning skill, as well as effective client communication, counseling, and streamlined practice management by leveraging FinTech. Please sign up for our info session for more information. Our next Gen Mentoring Forum session is on December 2nd, 1 p.m. Please join me to interview Ashley Murphy, talking about what is international financial planning. And thank you all for attending, and we'll see you in the next Mentoring Forum session. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vlad.
Thank you and goodbye.